so much. You've been a longtime friend and supporter and leader in this community, and I really appreciate seeing you today and having you introduce me particularly. And Carol, thank you for your leadership. We share the same sorority. Don't hold that against us. The Delta Gammas are the best. Excuse me, ladies. It may be in other sororities, but Carol's a wonderful sorority sister, and I know she's given great leadership to the Rotary. In fact, it reminds me, or I'm minded seeing this audience, how it's changed over time. I'm feeling a little bit dated myself, having been a senator now for almost 18 years, and state treasurer 8 years before that, and a legislator. So I've been literally coming to Shreveport and speaking to this particular Rotary Club, as well as Bossier, for many of those years. And I can remember coming years ago, and there wasn't a woman in the room, so it's good to see many, many women here, and I notice and recognize your leadership team and a very diverse group of the community, and I really want to commend the Rotary for its diversity and expanding, and it's happening not just in Louisiana, but all over the world, and it's really wonderful so that leaders can come together and really make good decisions that benefit the entire community. And I know that women like to be more organized generally than men, so forgive us for being a little maybe too organized in groups that were traditionally male, but I think you'll find very useful service by these women leaders. And I'm minded looking at this group of women leaders this week. We had and Lillian knows Congresswoman Boggs very well, but we lost a great leader, a member of the greatest generation. Lindy Boggs was 97 years old when she died. This year, we just buried her last week in Point Coupee, where she's from. People think Lindy was born in New Orleans, but she was born in Point Coupee. Some of you may remember her long distinguished history, but she is the literally great-great-granddaughter, or great-great-great-granddaughter of the first governor of the territory of Louisiana, Governor Claiborne. Where she gets her name, Lindy Morrison Claiborne Boggs, the long name. But she was an extraordinary leader, and at her funeral, and many eulogies were given, and I was pleased to be there. You know, I said that Lindy Boggs really did set for our state, as far as I'm concerned, a gold standard for public service. Besides being a member of Congress, you'll remember that as a mother, she had 4 children. She lost one at birth. She lost her daughter at the age of 50 to cancer. Her husband was lost over Alaska. She stepped into his job to do his job for us as a member of our delegation, and then became the first to serve a distinguished career in Congress, raising children and dozens of grandchildren, great-grandchildren. Went to be the first woman ever to be the ambassador to the Vatican. And as John Rowe and I were speaking, we looked at each other and said she was absolutely the only person we know that could ever get away with calling the Pope darling. And I actually heard her do that. And it was shocking to see the Pope just smile at her and say, "Thank you, Ambassador Boggs. I love being called that by you. We wouldn't dare." But that was Lindy Boggs, and she was a great mentor, and I wanted to begin just my short presentation, because I know we're out at 1 o'clock, remembering her and so many wonderful people that have served our state. But she was a true role model, and I know loved North Louisiana, although she never represented it. I can promise you, with Bennett Johnson here and Joe Wagner and some of the others that represented this district, Lindy was there for them, helping, and that's just the way she was. I mean, it just wasn't about Judy, as you know, helping her district. She was a real player. Maybe if she was still in Washington, maybe we'd all be getting along a little bit better, because she called everybody darling, and it helped, I think. So we're mindful of her great leadership. I want to just hit a couple of highlights about the things that I've been working on as now the leader of our delegation in Washington, and bring you all to date about a few kind of exciting things that I think are happening here in Northwest Louisiana because of the work that we do. And I'm mindful as I speak that should I be fortunate enough to be reelected in 2014, I'll be, hopefully, that will happen, taking the gavel as the chair of the Energy Committee in the United States Senate. And it's been 24 years since Bennett Johnson held that gavel. And it's been 24 years since Billy Tozan had that gavel in the House. So it's a very kind of exciting time to see some of our delegation, not just myself, but others too. Rodney's now Alexander right down the road and has some good seniority, and he's moving up, both of us on the Appropriations Committee. And while it's not as powerful as it once was, because we do not have earmarking power any longer, which was specifically directing some congressional funding to our states and districts, there are ways that we can be very influential in building projects and laying the groundwork for good works to happen. And one of the things that I'm able to do as chair now of the Homeland Security Committee, the Appropriations Committee, which is a $42 billion budget, and I write that budget with my ranking member, Dan Coates from Indiana. Every year, we now write that bill together. It's a $42 billion bill. It actually funds all of border control and border security. It funds all the travel, transportation, customs. It funds TSA, which is it's still a work in progress. We're trying to fund most of the cyber, at least cyber related to .com, gov.com, not the military side, but the general government side, which is a big part of the cybersecurity space, and funds initiatives to protect the private infrastructure, which is done a little bit through Homeland and some through Commerce. So my first point is I'm very happy to say that because of what the state, and I want to give the state and the locals, you all at Bossier credit for building the Cyber Innovation Center. Just because we could not land the Cyber Command, but did instead, because of our hard work and a lot of my leadership, helps us land the Nuclear Strike Command. I don't want you to think that we have gotten our eyes off the ball in the Cyber Innovation Center. There's a lot of investment that's going to be made in our country in the cyberspace because the wars that we fight in the future, the attacks that come to us every day, not just attacking our military, but attacking the infrastructure. We have literally thousands, this is frightening, but thousands of hack and attacks, malfunctions coming from Russia, coming from China, coming from discontented people and groups all over the country that want to do harm here in the United States. You know, the internet is a great and wonderful and powerful tool, and we're all using it to make our life better and more convenient and more prosperous, more efficient. But it also, if not protected correctly, can really cause harm. Any business person here running a bank or critical infrastructure knows what I'm talking about. There was a crime committed just in the last month where people from Russia stole $350 million from a group of banks. Those kinds of hacks and attacks are going to get more and more prevalent. The point of this is that because the state and Bossier and the locals put that Cyber Innovation Center there, and it's one of the most really extraordinary physical facilities, and with the Bossier Community College connection, and now with my chairmanship of the Appropriations Committee on Homeland Security, I brought Secretary Napolitano there. I just recently brought Barbara Mikulski, who chairs the entire Appropriations Committee. Met last week with General Alexander, who runs the Cyber Command for the whole government. And we're beginning to lay out a very, conceptually, but exciting, with Craig Spawn and all the folks that help with the Cyber Innovation Center, a possibility for this cyber footprint to be very big here in Northwest Louisiana. Now, it's at the very beginning of it, but what you have, and I hope you realize this, is not just the local leadership that made this happen, but the federal leadership team focused on it, but you've also got a great asset in CenturyLink, which is now one of the largest internet provider companies in the world, second only or third to AT&T and Verizon. CenturyLink is not leaving North Louisiana, contrary to popular myth. They are staying. Glen Coast is committed to building CenturyLink, which is going to be one of the largest corporations it's one of the fastest growing corporations. They moved 1,000 people here already from places like Denver and et cetera, but the power of having an internet provider on this I-20 corridor cannot be underestimated. For the way this world is developing, for the importance of the internet, for the importance of the defenses to our country, with Barksdale being here, this place has all of the ingredients necessary to create a big footprint for cyber. Now everybody, the President and the leadership of Congress, is getting ready to invest within our budgets, billions of dollars to protect this nation against cyber attacks. And I am committed to work with you and the leadership of this Rotary, the mayor, Senator Glover, who knows this, Mayor Walker of Bossier, who I stay in touch with very regularly on this and visit that site often, and the leadership of Bossier and Caddo to do everything I can, just like Ben Johnson was able to do when he was the senator and when he was on the Appropriations Committee, to drive drive infrastructure resources to build it. Not everything can go at Fort Meade. Not everything can go to Northern Virginia. We have to get out of the blast zone, which is what we call the Washington area. If we're going to get it blown up, that's where it's going to happen first. It has to be out of the blast zone for redundancy to be able to protect our nation. Now, tech is already taking a major leadership role. I was there with them yesterday with President Geis. We walked through the Innovation Center, the things that are going on, and the memorandum of understanding is being developed right now. So between tech, CenturyLink, et cetera, et cetera. Grambling is going to be a part of that as well. And it's going to be very interesting how this develops over the next couple of years, but exciting. Tech has developed, with the Cyber Innovation Center, the first ever, not secured, $300,000 grant. They won it. I mean, I can't earmark it anymore. In the old days, I could just earmark $500,000 to them and it would have been done. That power's been taken away, so it's harder. Not nearly as easy as when Bennett and Lindy were in the Appropriations Committee, but with both hands tied behind my back, which they are right now, and there's no more earmarking, we're able to still use our influence and power to push a $300,000 grant right here, first in the country, to develop the cyber training. So we have to roll out 1 million workers in the cyberspace. 1 million. These are workers that have to have a high school degree and at least 2 years of college to work everywhere, not just for the government, not just for the military, not just for Homeland Security, but for the private sector, for every bank, every critical manufacturer that can feel these or will be subject to some of these cyber attacks of people who are just not happy about America. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people out there, not as many maybe that like us, but there are some that are determined to undermine our country, and we have to be very vigilant on this. So I'm excited to tell you all that I'm thrilled with the leadership that's here, and you've got my commitment to continue to build. At Barksdale, we have, of course, the Nuclear Strike Command. This is going to be a little tricky over the next couple of years from a big perspective in Washington. Washington is trying to debate right now how many nuclear weapons do we really need, what they should look like, where they should be placed, how they should be used, when they should be used, and how they should be delivered. I hope this community knows that you're in the center of that discussion because you are the Nuclear Strike Command center. Those decisions that are made are going to affect what happens here at Barksdale. I think the B-52s are fine, but that whole nuclear stockpile issue, happily, I'm on the Appropriations Committee that funds that, Energy and Water, and I'm on the Defense Subcommittee. So, and you've got Rodney, as I said, on the Appropriations Committee. So again, we're in a good place to help direct some really big and powerful decisions that are going to be working here in the next couple of years. I want to talk about energy and natural gas. I am extremely excited. You know, President Obama and I do not agree on everything. There are some things we do agree on, and I'm proud to support the President when I think he's right on some things. But he and I have very different views views about energy. I'm much stronger on domestic production, much stronger on gas and oil, an advocate for fracking. You can do it with a small environmental footprint. The technology that we have developed, mostly in Louisiana, we can be very proud. And this community particularly, Shreveport, I mean, in the old days, in the 1940s and 50s, developed some of the first gas fields in the whole country. You all know the history of this area. Monroe as well, and then it went offshore over Creole, Louisiana. We developed the technology for the offshore industry. So if we know anything in Louisiana besides agriculture and how to plant, a good corn crop and soybeans and everything else that we do, we know how to mine for oil and gas, and we know its value to us, to our communities, and to the public generally. And so I'm going to continue to push for expanded domestic production. I only ask the local governments in the state to husband the money that you make well. Don't fritter it away, because it will be, one day this resource is going to be dried up. You want to be able to, like DeSoto Parish, take those great revenues that they're making, and the school board, then, really use it well and think carefully about how to invest in the state as well. And we will try to do the same at the federal level. On the oil and gas front, again, I differ a little bit with President Obama on this. I'm for expanded drilling in the Gulf of Mexico, offshore, in the Outer Continental Shelf. I'm leading the effort not only to expand access to more drilling, but most importantly, to help Louisiana secure our fair share of those revenues, because they are significant. I don't know how many of you are from South Louisiana or have friends that live in any of the coastal communities. I'm not just talking about New Orleans. I'm talking about Morgan City, or New Iberia, or Lake Charles, or Cameron, or Johnson City in Cameron Parish. You know that right off of that shore, our shore, we generate $6 billion a year for the federal treasury. And ever since the first oil well went offshore in Creole, Louisiana, we have not gotten our fair share of those revenues, because anything outside of 3 miles goes all to the federal government, despite the fact that all the work to produce those revenues happens right here at home. I passed a bill with your help and support when I was elected last time to change that and to make it more fair, and I succeeded against a lot of odds, because even my Democratic chair was not for it, but I passed it anyway out of the committee with a good coalition of supporters to get 37.5%. But President Bush insisted on an arbitrary cap, not him personally, but the administration. Interior states have no cap. Wyoming gets $1 billion of revenue sharing a year. We get virtually nothing. We now have a bill that gives us 37.5%, but we live with this arbitrary cap. I've got a bill called the FAIR Act to lift the cap, accelerate the funding, and the idea is to bring to Louisiana what we should have been getting since the 1920s, which is a steady, reliable source of revenue from our own production. And I say our own, it's federal land, but it is inaccessible to the federal government without us. It's like giving a servitude to your neighbor. It may be their house, but they can't get to their property if they don't come with a servitude. If they don't have their own driveway, you're giving them a servitude. They should pay you something for that, unless you're going to be very generous. And we can't afford to be very generous right now in Louisiana, because we've got a lot of needs. So I'm going to continue to work on this energy and potentially get to be chair of the committee and continue to push that out. I want to mention just 2 other things really quickly. One, for those of you that are bankers and credit unions in this, and I know we have a good number of members, I'm not on the banking committee, but as chair of the Small Business Committee, I am very mindful that some of these regulations are hard after Dodd-Frank that's fallen hard on the community banks. And I'm filing a bill, I think we just filed it before I left, with Republicans, so it's bipartisan, to try to give some relief to community banks so that you can be a little freer, not under such a heavy regulatory regime, to lend money to the small businesses that are all represented in here to help them to grow. Because businesses can't grow without capital. They can plow their profits back in, but they need steady, good lines of credit to be able to help them to grow and expand. And a high-speed internet, which I'm sorry to say I secured, because this is all about small business development, an $80 $80 million grant to help small businesses. They need capital. They also need access to high-speed internet. I had secured that a couple of years ago, and unfortunately, our governor turned it back. The only grant in the nation that was turned back. Every other governor, Republican and Democrat, managed to use it, but for some reason, our state couldn't figure it out, so it's gone. It was for North Louisiana. It is gone. Then we lost an early childhood education grant, but that's a whole other story. I want to focus just a minute on small business. As chair of the committee, helping with capital, technical assistance, and relief to the banks so that you all can grow your own businesses, et cetera, here. The government should do its part. You know, there's some people that say the government doesn't have any role in creating business. I disagree. Governments have a lot to do, local, state, and federal, with business creation. Building a highway provides infrastructure for businesses to locate. Building water lines and sewer lines and electricity available, reliable, and cheap, not cheap, but inexpensive, affordable is a better word, is a very important thing for governments to do. Business can't function. That's why undeveloped countries can't develop. It's not they don't have smart people. It's not that they don't have great ideas. It's not even that they don't have natural resources. They don't have infrastructure. They don't have roads. They don't have electricity. That's what's happening in Iraq and in many places. The electricity goes out 8 hours a day. How do you like to run a business with no electricity? So when I hear people yelling and screaming, which a lot of people are doing these days about, government has no role in the creation of business, I want to remind everybody it most certainly does. Now, can government do everything? No, but business needs to do its part, government needs to do its part, and the jobs are going to be created here by smart strategies and also focusing on the many, many, many small businesses in the state that are represented in large measure by businesses with under 25 employees. When you think there's nothing really small about small business, because when you add it up, it's a great economic force. But when I think about small business in Washington, I'm not thinking about 200 jobs or 300 or 400 or 500, which is the definition. I'm thinking about many of our little entrepreneurs that have 3 people, 5 people, 25 people, and 50 people, and giving them the help they need to grow and expand, whether it's restaurants, shoe shops, et cetera, et cetera. So in conclusion, I just talked about a few things. I don't have time to go through, I could speak about 20 other things, but I want to give you all, despite that you hear very negative things about what's happening in Washington, and then there are some really tough things going on. There's too much gridlock, there's too much partisanship, there's too much animosity among, members. It was not like that when Bennett was in. It wasn't like that when Lindy's in. And I'm going to try to be someone that can help bridge the gap. Sometimes I do that better than other times. But I want you to know that there are some, despite all that, very positive things that are happening in Washington to affect this area. The port, the infrastructure, the job creation, and I'm not going to let the squabble or gridlock in Washington stop me from trying to do my job, which I promised Bennett when I took this job I would never forget Shreveport, which is his home, and North Louisiana. So thank you all very much. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Senator Landrieu, with Obamacare, you were the deciding vote on that. What do you think is going to happen or continue to happen in the business community as we continue to constrict to try to prepare for that law and go to a part-time economy, basically, is what's taking place. So how would you share the benefit of this program when it's going to cost so much?
Well, first of all, thank you for asking that question. I have a long list of things I'm going to read out because you have not heard any of this, and you'll start hearing it from me because I did vote for the Affordable Care Act. And I'm going to read you a list of the positive things that are happening. And start with this idea initially, and I suggest by the way you answered the question that you're not a supporter of it, but this idea started from the Heritage Foundation. It didn't come out of the Democratic think tank, it came out of a Republican conservative think tank. Because the essence of the Affordable Care Act is a market-based, insurance-based, private sector model to try to get us to a place where competition in the private market drives down costs for everybody, particularly the people that have insurance like you and like me. In the old system, before the Affordable Care Act, everybody that had insurance was paying about a $1,200 tax for everybody that didn't. And there were more and more people that didn't have it. Not just poor people didn't have it, middle class people didn't have it, small business owners couldn't have it because it wasn't affordable to them. And it wasn't available at any cost. Because if you had a pre-existing condition, cancer, diabetes, if you had been in a car wreck, or if you were perfectly healthy and your wife was perfectly healthy, but you gave birth to a child with autism, you were never allowed to keep your insurance. So you lost your insurance and people were going bankrupt right and left. I didn't think that was a good thing for the country. So voted for a bill to change it. Is it perfect? No. Is it better than what we had? Absolutely yes. And I'm going to read a couple of things about what we do right now. 1.4 million Louisianians, counting all of you in this room, many of you, will no longer have a lifetime limit on your health insurance. If you had a large deductible of insurance that you paid for, you chose, you paid for it. If you read the fine print, it would say, we'll do this, we'll do that. But if you would see $250,000, no more insurance, that's illegal now. No one can put a cap on you lifetime or annually. There are 932,000 Louisianians that have private insurance have just been added preventive service coverages at no cost. Without a copay, it can happen, and there are 1.9 million non-elderly, including 266,000 children, who have pre-existing conditions and will not be denied coverage because if you have a pre-existing condition, you now can get insurance. So contrary to what everyone's heard, believe me, I hear it all the time. The Affordable Care Act is not a government-run program. It is a private sector model for insurance to be offered through the exchanges. Now let me say two things. Governor Jan Brewer is one of the most conservative governors in the country. She's a Republican. She's from Arizona. She didn't support the Affordable Care Act, but you know what she's doing? She's implementing the exchange. You know what she's doing? She's expanding Medicaid because it will give her state, I don't know what her number is, but I'll tell you what our number is. The federal government was going to give us and pay for it, not add to the deficit, pay for it, and give us $26 billion over 10 years to help our rural hospitals so that when a person that works or poor, but it's mostly working people, these are people that make $20,000 or $30,000. They make minimum wage. They're not sitting home doing nothing. They're working. They show up at a hospital now. They do not have insurance. They're too young to be on Medicare. And because our governor said no, they can't even pay with a Medicaid card, so the hospital treats them for free and charges all of us. That's a bad system. It is not. It doesn't drive down cost. It adds cost to everybody. So what this system is going to try to do, it is not perfect, I'm willing to fix it, not willing to repeal it. What this system will do is give everybody a way to pay so there are no more free riders. No more free riders. Everybody has to pay when they go to the doctor or to the nurse or the hospital. You either pay with your Medicare card, you pay with your Medicaid card, or you pay with your private insurance. Because in the old days, people were just showing up with nothing, freeloading, and those that had insurance were bearing that burden. Prices were going up, and small businesses couldn't get anything. Now let me tell you one more thing about this that you haven't heard, but you'll hear it from me. One of the reasons I voted, there were many, but one of the reasons I voted is as chair of the Small Business Committee because I had people coming up to me crying, telling me, Senator, I work for, GM, or I work for this. I want to start my own business, but my health care is with my employer, and my wife has cancer, or my daughter is blind, or my son can't hear. I can't get insurance. I want to start my own business. So what we had in America was a bad thing. We had job lock. You were locked into your job because your health care was associated with your employer. One thing that's not been said about the Affordable Care Act is when it works and when it's implemented, and there are Republican governors implementing it as I speak, you will be able to take your insurance with you wherever you go. So there's no more job lock. You like your company, you stay there, you have good insurance. If you don't, you leave, you start your own business, you can still afford it, whether you have 3 employees or 2. So you're going to hear a lot more about this, but don't think that I'm going to back up for a minute on it, and I'm going to explain it. I am very confident about it. And like I said, it's not perfect. We've already amended a big part of it. 1099 form, we've already amended. We could amend some other things, and the president has made some amendments, pushed back the mandate, giving businesses a chance. And most businesses in Louisiana that are under, well, first of all, any business under 50 employees doesn't have to provide it, and if you're between 50 and 200, you can get tax credits. Now, every business is going to have to make their own decisions. Most businesses will be affected positively. There will be some that are going to have to make adjustments. But it's much better than the old days where you wouldn't choose your doctor, you couldn't choose your doctor, you get no guarantee of your doctor. Worse than that, you had no guarantee your insurance would be there the next day. So how do you run a business without that? Now you can never lose it. So that's a little bit about it. I'm happy to take any more questions, but if there's another question on another subject, that would be great, or this. Go ahead.
We have time.
I wanted to ask if, on the Affordable Care Act, if are you considering, or is anyone considering taking it out of the hands of the IRS? And I also wanted to ask, taking it out of the hands of the IRS. And also, I wanted to ask if there was any consideration for not exempting the unions that support the Democrats so strongly, and if there was any consideration of Congress having this insurance for
Let me take it one
themselves.
at a time, because there's a lot of misinformation. First of all, the IRS is not running the Affordable Care Act. CMS has always run health care, and it's in the Department of Health and Human Services. The IRS does not run health care. They will have nothing to do with running it. It's run by CMS. It always has. What part of the Affordable Care Act, when a person gets a tax credit for their insurance, just like any business person that gets any tax credit here, you do. You get tax credit for depreciation. You get that. The IRS will give you your tax credit, but they're not running health care. Thirdly, interestingly, the unions just wrote a letter to the Democrats saying they're upset with the Affordable Care Act because it does affect union plans. So this is not something that doesn't affect unions and non-unions. It affects everyone. So they're not jumping up and down real happy. We're trying to figure that out. But it is a misconception that the unions are happy and the business isn't. The union plans are much like big business plans. Think about this. Unions for years have attracted workers because the insurance is attached to the union. The only way you could get insurance was to be a member of the union. The unions, because we now have an idea to separate your insurance from your employer so that you can be in the union, you don't have to be in the union, you can work for big business, you can work for small business, you're more free. The unions are having difficulty with that. I understand that. I mean, believe me, I understand it. But the benefits, I think, in the long run are going to be good for people to be able to keep their insurance wherever they go and wherever they dream and whatever they want to do. They don't have to sacrifice their child's life. And thirdly, or their wife or themselves. Thirdly, Congress is under the Affordable Care Act. Now, we had a great system. That was one of the best systems, but we're a big employer. The federal government is the largest employer. Many, many big employers. We never had a problem with insurance. Big employers never did. The problem with it was nobody else could get it. No small business could get it. No individuals could get it. But in the Affordable Care Act, one of the Republicans put in that we would lose our insurance. So the members are going to lose our federal insurance, and we're going to go on the exchange. That would help me if our governor would set up the exchange so I could get on it, because that's what he's supposed to do. But if he doesn't, I guess I'll go join the one in Mississippi or Texas. But yes, so that's what's happening. But the IRS, believe me, they can hardly run what they're running now, let alone run health care. All right, thank you all very much.